Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. We'll waffle for about 30 seconds per minute, just to allow any latecomers to join in. But whilst we're all waiting, thank you for joining today. Obviously, this is all about unlocking Azure potential within your own business and with your end customers or potential end customers. If you have any questions at all during this session, please do not hesitate to use the Q&A section or the chat option, whichever you prefer, and we'll be answering those as we go. Obviously, any we don't cover, we'll pick up at the end as well. And also, if you have anything in here which really piques your interest and you want to have follow-up sessions on, please do get in touch, because we'll be looking to engage with any partners who want to kind of push this forward and kind of use any of the information we'll be delivering today. Right, I reckon that's enough time due to my extreme dislike for unusual silences. So yeah, thanks for joining everybody today. This session today is looking at unlocking Azure potential for our partner base within your customers, potential customers. So my name's Max Chamberlain. Just to introduce myself, I head up the Azure practice here at Giacom. Just to give a bit of context, within Giacom, we have obviously our account management team who you will engage with, but we also have a practices model sat behind them, who are a team of specialists operating within a multitude of different areas. So we've got the Azure practice, we've got a modern workplace practice, a security practice, a Teams phone practice, and within there a number of specialist heads, the number of which actually escapes me, but I know it's probably about 20 plus now. So if you ever have any kind of specialist requirements, please do engage with your account management team and we can support on those. Obviously today we'll be looking at Azure specifically, and this session is looking at partners or partners who currently want to engage more within Azure to deliver Azure-based solutions to your customers. In terms of agenda for today, firstly, we want to go over kind of what the Azure practice is and what we do here at Giacom with our partners. I want to make sure that you're aware and utilising us. Really bad use of animations there, apologies. We'll be looking at repeatable and scalable solutions. So how do we sell solutions based on Azure? And how can we structure those to communicate those best to our customers? Cost optimization, it's a real kind of point that I am quite passionate about, because bringing partners into the cloud cost is obviously one of the first and main things that people are querying about, and how do we make that most optimized and bring the best value to the customers. Microsoft and Giacom programs, so what is available to you as a partner, what's available to the customers from a variety of different perspectives, including deployment services, assessments, funding, etc. And then we'll wrap up with Q&A at the end. As I did say before, if you have any questions at all during this, please do not hesitate to chuck them in the Q&A section on here. That's live and it's being monitored, so we'll pick those up as we go along, because obviously if we're on a subject and you have a question, it's best to answer it there and then. So first and foremost, the Azure practice. So like I said, we've got a whole range of practices here at Giacom. The Azure practice as a team has been around for about four or 5 years now. We've grown quite a lot over the years, and as has the rest of the practices as well. But within the Azure practice, we've got 6 heads. So myself and Edward Milson head up the Azure practice between us. So myself, I head up the commercial side of the practice, with Adam and Vibhu working within my team, and Edward Milson heads up the technical pre-sales team, with Theo and Justin working with him. So we are available to partners to utilize for anything around the Azure world. There's nothing we do that comes with a cost. We are purely available to you all to utilize for your support and kind of technical expertise. What do we do? It's a very good question. There are 1,001 things we do on a day-to-day basis, as you can all imagine, working in the technology space. But just to give it a bit of a high level, these all sit across the 2 sides of the practice, and there's a lot of grey area in between when we operate together. But go-to-market strategy planning, this is where we start with a lot of our partners who are beginning within the Azure piece. and we'll be able to kind of sit down with you kind of virtually or in person, depending on what suits best, and work through kind of what it is you want to go to market with on Azure. How do we plan that? How do we look at that? Look at the next 6, 12, 24 months, and kind of really assess and support you in building out that strategy and how you can go to market with that. Building out these repeatable and scalable solutions, which I'll be going through in a minute, kind of how do we best structure those? How do we communicate those to our internal teams, sales, marketing, technical teams? And how do we then in turn communicate those to our customers to help best kind of sell those? We could do sales training, floor days as well, kind of building out that bit of energy with the sales team to get them up and running and knowledgeable and able to kind of best communicate to the customer base. We can put in incentives and things like that as well for the right environments. Ed and his team are a team of specialist pre-sales engineers, so they are there to be utilised by yourselves for any pre-sales support and opportunity scoping and pricing, etc., across any Azure environments, any kind of Azure opportunities. Technical demos and training, again, Ed and the team can support on those, kind of any particular solutions or resources you're looking at within Azure. If you need any kind of deep dive into those, we can support. Microsoft funding and programs, this is something we will push heavily onto you because it is, at the end of the day, free resources, free support, free money available to all our partners and customers that we want to make sure we're best utilizing from Microsoft. Cost optimization, that's a particular passion of my own, but also across the team, we're very on top of kind of making sure that we are giving the best prices and best optimized environments for our customers through yourselves. This creates happier customers, as we all know, and creates a wider ability for them to utilize their budgets for more technology through yourselves, more kind of upsell on things like security and other areas, etc., etc. But to summarize what we do, our job and our kind of motto is we want to simplify Azure to help your business grow. And that's what we're looking to do across all our engagements with our partners. Azure is a beast. We understand that. We work in it day in, day out. And I had a full head of hair when I started working with Azure, to give you some context. So what we want to be able to do is to help you kind of knuckle down exactly where you want to be moving with Azure with your customer base, and how can we help simplify that? How can we help bring that to light, and how can we help you sell that and deploy that for your customers? So first and foremost, how do we simplify Azure? And the best way to look at it is repeatable and scalable solutions. Azure is an entire environment of resources, tools, solutions that essentially are there for you to deploy whatever you want for your customers. If you can imagine it from a technological perspective, whether it's from a very simple kind of storage migration right through to all singing, all dancing, data analytics and AI, kind of pre-built AI solutions, and everything in between, you can build it within Azure. It's a public cloud. The resources are there. The technology is there and supplied by Microsoft. But Azure as a thing is not a sellable kind of solution. It is a massive box of Lego pieces, which need to be put together and configured in the right way to deliver these solutions. So the way we work with our partners is to try and help you identify and sell and market and deploy set solutions within Azure that can be commoditized and kind of communicated to your customers simply. And we're going to run through a few of those in a second. But firstly, just looking at a bit of market information here. So one of our executive team, Nathan Marks, if you've heard him talk, if you haven't heard him talk, I would recommend it because he's extremely knowledgeable, but he does a lot of work with kind of a lot of kind of industry-wide kind of research teams. Within here, we can see a lot of information, and these things always do a lot of information, but trying to dissect it a little bit, the kind of the growth rates we're seeing within cloud at the moment are huge. They're huge across the whole of the technology stack, security, et cetera, but purely looking at infrastructure here. Within here, we've got these hotspots that we're looking at, and this is really where we want to be guiding our partners to kind of help sell additional kind of solutions. And these three top ones here are infrastructure as a service, and that's looking at base level migrations from wherever they are at the moment, whether that's on premise or private cloud into Azure. Platform as a service, which is more looking at those kind of more pre-built solutions, whether that's a pre-built SQL platform or something along those lines, right through to Azure or data analytics, and co-location, so commonly referred to as hybrid infrastructure. So looking at a mixture of on-premise and and kind of cloud environments, which is extremely popular still when there are still workloads on premise that are still needed. These are the top three that we're seeing growth in here, and it's it's a real kind of boost to any partner to be able to kind of start getting their customers within these areas. So what do we look at when we look at these set solutions, these repeatable and scalable solutions that we're looking at? So I'm going to run through a few of them now. And again, if you have any questions on any of these, please do pop them in the Q&A. The most common one we see are Windows and SQL Server migrations. These are your kind of bread and butter of what to look at with your customers. Why should we be looking at these? Firstly, it's the most easily communicated. A customer has an environment on premise, 90% of servers run on Windows. SQL is the most popular kind of database technologies. And that is where a lot of your first steps are going to be with a lot of your customers when looking at kind of selling those Azure-based solutions. Firstly, we've got end of support. End of support is always out there for any version, whether it's happened or whether it's coming, for any Windows or SQL Server and kind of environments. For a great example is SQL Server and Windows 2012 R2, which went end of life 2023 in October. I imagine actually a lot of you probably wouldn't be shocked, but I'm always shocked by the amount of customers that still have these systems running on premise with no kind of extended support rights. So what do we do about that? One great thing is when you migrate these into Azure, you get extended support up until the October of 2026. So if you've got customers on 2012 R2 at the moment, if you migrate those into Azure, you get extended support until October next year. If they need to remain on 2012 R2. The same will happen, I imagine, with 2016 when that comes to end of support as well. And these are great conversation starters for customers. Security only ever gets more and more important when it comes to conversations with customers and the awareness of it out there in the market. It's always becoming more and more prevalent. So having these conversations is an extremely good opener. Cost efficiency. So you've got an environment on premise which runs your entire infrastructure as a customer. A lot of customers believe that migrating that to the cloud is more expensive. That I will put my hat on and say 99% of the time is incorrect as an assumption. The reason people believe it's more costly to go into the cloud is because they're taking what they've currently got and they're moving it as is into the cloud. That's not how we recommend things are done, purely because that's not how the cloud is designed to be used. What you're looking for is you're looking to right size that environment. A customer's going to have an environment built to kind of give them space to grow, give them space to expand their operation. However, when you're in the cloud, you're paying for what you use when you need it. So you can auto schedule your virtual machines. You can, kind of right size your storage servers, etc., and make sure that everything is right size. There are tools we'll go through later which enable you to do that automatically and give you the full report based on what they've got. Other areas of cost efficiency, you can look at committing and saving with things like reserved instances or Azure Savings Plan, and also something called Azure Hybrid Benefits, where you can bring your own licenses to the cloud as well. Again, we'll go through these in a bit more detail in a bit, but these things can vastly reduce those costs. And obviously, we as a practice will be able to deliver you kind of any estimates that we put through with you and with those built in as well. So cost efficiency is a major selling point of the cloud, and any customers that do say it's it's going to be more expensive in the cloud, please do bring those opportunities to us so we can happily prove them wrong. Scalability, customers, any business, you want to grow, we want to grow, you want to grow, your customers want to grow as businesses. So scalability is key when it comes to technology. If you've got everything on premise, like I said, you need to have that built out and ready to go for any expansion that you've got coming up, or if they suddenly need to, they need 2-3 more servers, that's going to cost a lot of capital expenditure to bring those servers in, and then the operational expenditure of managing those. Within the cloud, you can do that with the click of a button. You can bring up exactly what you need when you need it, whether that's growth over time, continually going up, or whether that's flexibility in terms of, you've got a customer who's got a seasonal workload, for example. It might be in retail and, end of the year, Black Friday through to Christmas is extremely busy. You can upscale their resources very, very quickly, very, very easily to match that demand. And then when it finishes, you can bring them back down again. So you're only paying for what you need when you need it. Modernization as well. So modernization, is often the next step within cloud migrations. First, we look at migration, but modernization is always there on that roadmap as well. On-premise environments are very difficult to modernize. You need to bring in specialist equipment, specialist minds, specialist abilities to be able to modernize kind of on-premise environments. Whereas in the cloud, you've got all that available to you. Once you've brought a customer in there, you can start road mapping. How are we going to take your infrastructure and put that into more of a pre-built environment with platform as a service models? How are we going to look at, how you manage your data, and how we can start to look at in the future bringing in more kind of complex data analytics tools such as Fabric, or even looking at AI as an option as well, with pre-built options in there for customers to really bring out the best of what they can do with their platforms. Again, this is all future road mapping stuff, but once you get them into the cloud, it enables that ability to then start road mapping with your customers on how they can modernize their business. And finally, the hybrid approach. I mentioned it before. Hybrid is not, uncommon at all. In fact, Azure is designed as a hybrid first environment. Microsoft completely understand that customers are not always going to need to migrate everything they have into the cloud from day dot. It's not something we push. In fact, it's something we often recommend against, because there will always be use cases for keeping things on premise. It might be that their existing infrastructure is still fit for purpose. It's not end of life. It's not end of support. But what do they have in there that is ready for the cloud? What is there that's on SQL 2012 R2? What is there that's, their storage is full, and they need to bring up some archive storage in the cloud to free some of that up. There'll always be those options of keeping them things on premise until it is time for it to move. But you can do that staggered approach by looking at a hybrid environment. The way Azure is designed, it works extremely well with kind of coexisting with that on-premise or other cloud environments, whether it's private or public, to make sure that everything runs very, very smoothly, right down to your kind of identity management system. So kind of whether it's obviously Enter ID on Azure, or kind of the equivalent on premise, we've got free connectors that make sure that everything syncs up right through to all the other technologies working very well with each other. So that hybrid approach is extremely easy to set up and manage. So that's the first one we look at, and that's Windows and SQL Server migrations, which are extremely common. And we've got a lot of partners who specialize in this and use this as their main go-to-market strategy and do extremely well out of it. So, if this is something you think would be useful for your customers, please do come and talk to us about how we can help you build this out as an option for your customers. The next up is Azure Virtual Desktop. So I'm just going to pop myself on mute because put myself on Do Not Disturb because I forgot to and I'm being harangued. Azure Virtual Desktop. So this does exactly what it says on the tin. It's a virtual desktop environment within Azure. The beauty of AVD is that it is extremely simple to deploy and manage. It's extremely cost effective, and it's extremely marketable to customers. Reason for that being, so traditional kind of RDS environments, looking at probably most common being the likes of Citrix, very kind of, I would personally say, kind of quite difficult to deploy and manage, extremely complex and expensive on the licensing side of things as well. But AVD solves a lot of these problems. So it's firstly deployed via a wizard within the Azure portal, which makes things a lot simpler. And you have full control of the infrastructure underlying it. So you can deploy and manage easily the virtual machines, the storage, the setup required to kind of power that virtual desktop environment. What that means is you can control the costs. I'm going to skip down on this point to number 3 here as well, because when you're setting that up, whether it's you want to have a certain amount of power available for each user, you only give them what they need. You can also give it to them when they need it. If your customer wants a virtual desktop environment between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, you can give them that. And outside of those times, you're not paying for that compute power. You're not paying for the licensing, for the any kind of auto-scheduled stuff that you don't need outside of those hours. That can really bring down those costs of what the customer's paying compared to an on-premise environment or an always-on environment in another cloud or whatever it is. You could also, if you were to have those on 24/7, you can still kind of commit to those compute instances with reserved instances or Azure Savings Plan. But the real kicker on Azure Virtual Desktop is the licensing side of things. So with Azure Virtual Desktop, when you're looking at the licensing piece, it's not like a traditional RDS environment where you have to license the servers individually. You have to then license kind of user or device clouds, etc. Azure Virtual Desktop licensing is covered by either M365 Business Premium, E3 or E5 licenses. So if a customer has those licenses, or you upsell the customer to those licenses, that covers all the licensing required for an Azure Virtual Desktop environment, which, as you can imagine, is a huge cost saving compared to a Citrix environment, for example. It's an absolute minefield of money to be saved. So huge amount of options there for especially customers already on those license models of potentially going to market with that as an upsell for them. Multi-session. So AVD is a multi-session environment. Sorry, it says Windows 10, 11 on there. So you change that to just 11 now. But essentially, it means you spin up a host pool. It's called of servers available for customers to utilize, and those end users are sharing those virtual machines. So say you've got 50 people that need access to, a certain amount of cores each. You can spin up 10 machines with enough power in each machine and have up to 5 people sharing each machine at a time. And you can also schedule that as well. So when the first 5 log on, the virtual machine 1 is spun up. When the 6th one logs on, virtual machine 2 spins up. When that person logs off, that one shuts down again. So you can have it really intelligently managing its own auto scheduling as well to react to exactly who is online, who needs to have a virtual machine available, and you're only paying for that when they're online and using it. Another huge advantage of Azure Virtual Desktop, and this is one I've not included on this deck, but I should have added it in, is the security piece. AVD is extremely popular with security and compliance focused industries. So we're looking at finance, we're looking at legal and similar ones. The reason for this being is that the data in the environment, you're just streaming this environment to your laptop or your any device you're using. That data doesn't leave the cloud, and you can set it up to block any data being downloaded to any local devices or leaving the cloud essentially. So when it comes to that security piece, it's hugely advantageous to have that ability to lock down that data, that information that is crucial to these businesses, and have that only ever sitting within the relevant data center you want it to sit in. And that ticks off the box of security. It ticks off the box of data sovereignty as well. So it not leaving the country or anything like that. But if someone was to get hold of my laptop on the train, if I'd left it on there, they would still need to then be able to access my virtual desktop environment, which I would have locked down with obviously MFA and all the standard requirements. So they still wouldn't be able to access any data within my environment because my laptop is purely just being used for streaming my desktop in my environment rather than having it all on there. So huge advantage there. Another advantage of that, actually, just saying that, obviously being able to just stream your desktop, is you can then really easily give people quite powerful environments. If you've got people working on, a Google Chromebook, for example, for an example of a particularly poor level laptop, you can have Chromebooks running things like CAD software, which need fully graphically enabled CPUs to be able to run them, because you're just streaming that environment, and you can have that running on a very, very basic level laptop. Reduces costs of hardware, reduces the need to replace that hardware as often as you would usually need to, and really bring those costs as well. So there's a real knock-on effect across the whole environment. And the final one there is third-party apps. So as well as for internal use for regular kind of desktop experience, you can also host third-party apps. So just have one app available to anybody that needs it, and you can sign up for a third-party access license, which is, I can't remember the cost of it now. Apologies, but you can essentially just kind of give that license to somebody who needs to access that app externally at any given point. So that's AVD. And again, these are all very high level overviews here. And obviously we would encourage anybody who wants to start looking at these to come and talk to us so we can deep dive into them a bit more. We just wanted to give you guys an example of what is available and what we see as successes in the market today. The next one is storage, backup, disaster recovery. So we're talking about your kind of business continuity here. It's fair to say storage is a pretty basic level kind of requirement for every single customer, and obviously within the cloud you've got storage types available for all use cases, whether that's file shares, which is quite a common, Azure Files is quite a common resource to be used when maybe, for example, a customer might be going over their SharePoint allowance. If a customer sits within their SharePoint allowance, yes, keep it in there. But if they start to go over that, could Azure Files be a cheaper or more effective option to them paying for the additional requirements on, to go above their allowance on SharePoint? Yes, is the answer a lot of the time. You've got blob storage for more of your kind of multimedia and kind of variable file types. You've got queue storage for apps, table storage, etc., etc. But then below that, you've got your different tiers as well. So you've got your hot, cool, cold, archive tiers where you can really start to cost optimize that storage. You know, if your legal company needs to store documents for 7 years, but are never really going to have to touch them, let's put them in archive storage. Let's keep that cost extremely low and put those there. If things need to be accessed kind of more frequently, you can look at the other access tiers of cold, cool, and hot, depending on what that frequency needs to be. You can really cost optimize your storage there to make sure customers are getting the most bang for their buck. Azure Backup, again, it's a very, Microsoft aren't the most imaginative when it comes to names, but they definitely do what they say on the tin. Azure Backup is a very easy to manage, easy to test, easy to deploy backup solution. It backs up any resources on Azure. You can use it to back up on-premise environments or other cloud environments as well. So if you've got a hybrid environment across, on-premise, Azure, other cloud, private cloud, you can use Azure Backup to back up all of those. I'm always amazed again at how many customers out there still have a more, I wouldn't say traditional, but more archaic, shall I say, backup system running, where they think, we back up our systems to another server in the same office. Surely we're fine. We all know deep down that's not okay, and it's not ticking any boxes in terms of kind of keeping their data safe. So Azure Backup, extremely kind of good base level option there to utilize as a backup server. Azure Site Recovery. So site recovery is your next step. We're looking at disaster recovery here. Microsoft's marketing team didn't like the word disaster, so they gave it a different name. But essentially, this is becoming a much, much, much larger kind of resale option for our partners at the moment. And a lot of our partners do actually go to market with this as a solution on its own. So their disaster recovery option can cover Azure resources, again, multi-cloud or on-premise. It can do all three. And what that gives customers is a fully snapshotted version of their environment, which will allow them to, if something were to go horrendously wrong through natural disaster or complete meltdown of a data center or internal systems, or even a cyber attack on their systems, you can immediately kind of spin up a snapshot of your environment to bring everything back online within, depending on the size of the environments, minutes up to an hour tops. So that is a crucial customer kind of focus for a lot of our partners, to go to them and say, what would happen to you if your systems went down tomorrow? How long would you survive without your data, without your systems running? And the answer, when you ask a customer that, is often quite a morose one, in that they realize they would be up the creek without a paddle. ASR, Azure Site Recovery, can kind of give you that ability to bring their systems back online very, very quickly if they were ever to experience a disaster. My biggest analogy on this is it is a form of insurance. You might be insured against a cyber attack, but the insurance doesn't cover you bringing things back online very quickly. So I would always recommend any customer having some kind of disaster recovery in place. All of these above here, these can all form, and these do form, part of what we would recommend as best practice in any environment, but also these can be individual services as well. And we have a lot of partners who do very well going to market with these, especially backup and site recovery as well, together as a disaster recovery and business continuity option. But it can really kind of give customers that first taste of the benefits of being in the cloud. And we see a lot of partners having success bringing customers into Azure Site Recovery, for example, and having that environment there ready to go. They see the benefits of the cloud. Some of them, unfortunately, have had to fail over in the past due to cyber attacks or other reasons. And they've seen that benefit when they failed over, and they've actually stayed within Azure. We've dubbed it Azure by disaster, a bit crass, but it starts giving the customers that kind of taste of what the cloud can deliver them. Following on for that, we've got security and identity. So these are less standalone services, but these are the wraparound services we would recommend within any of our Azure environments. So Enter ID, traditionally Active Directory or Azure Active Directory. This is where we manage our users, our identities. Most customers will have an Enter ID in place. This communicates very well with any on-premise Active Directories as well. There's kind of full kind of tools available to have those kind of synchronize with each other and work very well in a hybrid environment. But obviously within Enter ID, you're managing your permissions, your access, your users, any kind of security things like MFA, SSO, conditional access, and so on and so forth. Defender for Cloud, Defender for Cloud is part of the Defender family within Microsoft. I think there's a new Defender that comes out every week over the last year, but this is essentially was originally called Azure Defender, so it's Microsoft's Defender tool to look at both Azure and also on-premise security as well. So what this delivers is at the base level a secure score. It delivers security posture management, so it will look at your current setup and say, this is how your current security posture is, and this is how we can start looking to improve it. It delivers threat protection and also threat path analysis as well. Sorry, 2 seconds. So that threat path analysis is looking at your live environment across cloud and non-cloud and saying basically this is where we can see the weaknesses. This is where we can see where attackers could potentially find their way into your environment to cause havoc. This is paid for on a per resource model. So you choose which resources you want covered by Defender for Cloud, and you pay per resource. Very simple, very easy to deploy, and extremely effective at bringing down your propensity to be getting into trouble with any cyber attackers. Azure Sentinel, more of a enterprise level tool. However, a lot of our partners are starting to engage this who are dealing with a kind of a larger scale on the Azure piece. It's a security information and event management tool, but also a security orchestration, automation and response tool as well. So again, more enterprise level for larger scale environments, but a lot of partners are also using this as their own tool to kind of deliver their own mini SOC, I suppose, to their customer base. Extremely intelligent AI driven security tool there. I won't go into it in too much detail now because there's a lot to run through, but if you are interested, obviously just get in touch and we can run you through its capabilities. And another one as well is DDoS protection. Obviously, DDoS being a distributed denial of service attack, basically somebody absolutely haranguing your servers with requests until it goes down. Think Glastonbury Day, all the systems going down, but in a malicious way. DDoS protection obviously delivers a full protection against that. It senses any attacks coming in and blocks any communication coming from that location on your servers. Across the security piece, there's a whole lot of things as well, such as Azure Firewall and other Azure native tools, which will deliver a full kind of security management kind of posture for yourselves and your customers. But these are the kind of the 4 main ones we would kind of see and utilize for our customer base. Oh, sorry, there was Azure Firewall at the bottom there as well. And finally, modernization and innovation. So yes, we like to work with partners who are beginning their Azure journey on looking at the more kind of infrastructure as a service piece. So looking at those migrations, virtual desktop, storage, backup, disaster recovery, etc. But that doesn't mean we aren't then also kind of wanting to work with you on looking at that roadmap for the customers. The need for the cloud, the need for AI, the need for data analytics is, when I started here 5 years ago, those were all things that we were trying to push onto partners to then push onto customers, and it was all very new, it was all very exciting, but it wasn't really making much ground outside of the enterprise place. However, these days we're seeing more those requirements coming from customers. People will understand what's available to them now, and they want to explore, they want to understand what they can do with their infrastructure. So that's where we can start looking at the next stages. So modernizing workloads, this is more looking at moving from an infrastructure as a service to a platform as a service, as I mentioned before. So moving off those kind of virtual machines where you're managing everything yourself right down to the operating system, more onto platform as a service. So SQL managed instance or Azure SQL database or Azure App Services would be a great example of those, where Microsoft have the pre-built environments ready for you to load your data into, do some configurations, and Microsoft are taking care of a lot more of the back end of the system, I suppose, and the operating system. Data analytics. Fabric has been one of the biggest things we've kind of seen grow in the last year within the practice. So Fabric being Microsoft's kind of main data analytics tool within Azure. A large piece of that has been around a change in the Power BI Pro licensing and that having to move over to the Fabric side of things. The abilities within it are phenomenal. The ability to kind of really just kind of get under the skin of data and manage it a lot more effectively has really been brought to light with that. And we're seeing a lot of requests come from this from customers through to partners through to us, which is it's a really good thing to see as customers now bringing that to the table rather than it being pushed onto them and suggested as an option. AI, You can't go more than 2 minutes on a technology chat without mentioning AI these days, but it's there, it's available, and it's phenomenally popular within Azure and with Copilot as well on the side as well to have these pre-built AI models available to our customers. The Azure piece is more around kind of looking at the pre-built models, whether that's kind of vision, audio, text to speech, whatever it is that will benefit your customer, and using those to build into their systems. You'd be surprised at how much it is being utilized within the SMB space. It's hugely popular. It's once you get your head around it, extremely easy to deploy, and those pre-built solutions are in there. And it's not just what you'd expect of ChatGPT and that baseline being in there with the Microsoft connection. Most AI models are available through Azure on a kind of a pay-as-you-go basis. So there's a whole host of stuff in there available to be utilized. And then finally, IoT as well. It doesn't get talked about as much these days because it has become more of a standard within our lives, IoT. But a lot of customers we have are looking at kind of how they can utilize IoT for connected devices. We've got a few that's kind of specialize in that area, and the pre-built models and kind of the hubs and whatnot within Azure are available to kind of help you deliver that technology to the customers. I'm just have a quick stop check if there's any questions in the Q&A section. Nothing yet. No problem. I'm hoping that means that everybody is understanding what I'm saying rather than just asleep. Right. So that's your basic kind of solutions that we look at. And the way we look at it, like I said, is we want to work with partners to build out what are you going to go to market with. We'd usually recommend picking 1, 2, or 3 kind of options from that list, and starting to work out with us how you can go to market with those solutions, how you can best commoditize those and communicate that to your customers. Because at the end of the day, customers care about one thing. They care 3 things. Sorry, they care about how much the system's going to cost, is it going to work, and if it breaks, who's going to fix it. If you can tick those 3 boxes by working with those solutions, then you've got a chance of getting through to your customers and getting them to understand the benefits of moving their kind of infrastructure into Azure. The first question is always cost, I find. So cost optimization is something we like to make sure that partners are aware of. Obviously, base level in the cloud is that use what you need when you need it message. So obviously you've got your right sizing, you've got your kind of auto scheduling, you've got all that piece that you can really bring down the cost of the cloud. However, on from there, you've also got a lot of other tools that you can utilize as well to bring down costs. First of these are reserved instances. So reserved instances operate on a commitment model within Azure. So they focus mainly on the compute side of things. It can be applied to things like storage, but it has to be very large in terms of kind of what it needs to be to reserve any storage piece. But looking at compute, it'll be across a number of different areas. So virtual machines being the most common, but any other compute-based kind of model generally will have a reservation kind of ability within it. So essentially what you look at is you'll commit to a 1 or 3 year term specific to the size and the region of the computing question. So it might be that you want to reserve a specific virtual machine size within UK South. You can pay upfront or you can pay monthly, and the discount around those is you'll get about on a 1 year reservation. It'll vary depending on the machines and the location, but it'll be around 30 to 35% on a 1 year and around a kind of 55 to 65% on a 3 year commitment. That can be a huge cost saving for customers compared to what they think it's going to be in the cloud. Or if you have customers who are already in Azure, if you're talking to them and kind of saying, could we have a look at this? Could we save you some money if you bring this over to us? These can be a hugely easy way to do that. There's a lot of flexibility built into them as well. Obviously virtual machines change sizes. So if you need to change the reserved instance to do that, you can cancel them, you can resize them and reorder new ones. There's a lot of flexibility built in there. So although the word commitment is there with the 1 and 3 years, Microsoft have a lot of flexibility built in to enable you to, change these with the customer's environment. And then you've got Azure Hybrid Benefit, which is essentially bring your own license to replace Windows or SQL Server licenses. This originally was mainly focused on anybody with on-premise licenses with existing software assurance. So if somebody is coming from on-premise, they have software assurance with their Windows licensing. That gives you the ability to essentially bring that licensing onto Azure, and you turn off the pay-as-you-go licensing, which you get through kind of any virtual machines within Azure. If you don't have the software assurance, which if I'm honest is 99.99% of SMB customers, you can also use server subscription licenses available via Giacom. That should not say Inti, my apologies, that's a previous company. And you can buy these, they're around 18 to 20 pounds a month for a 1 year option, and you can replace a virtual machine's Windows licensing with that cost. So for example, a D8 series virtual machine will cost around 190 to 200 pounds a month in Windows Server licensing on a pay-as-you-go model. You can turn on Azure Hybrid Benefit, purchase these Windows Server subscriptions and pay £20 instead. So if you're looking at a virtual machine, you can bring the compute cost down with those reserved instances. You can bring the licensing cost down with the Azure Hybrid Benefit. And once you put those together, you're looking at a substantial saving compared to what you'll be looking at on a pay-as-you-go model. So as you can see, the costings piece, a lot of people aren't kind of fully aware of what is available from the cost optimization on Azure. There's a myriad of other things we can do as well, which we can advise and support on, but these are the two main ones I want to highlight to you today, because this is where we can see a lot of money being saved for customers. And how should we use that? So optimization as a service, it's one thing we see a lot of partners miss on their offering. So partners will always have that support piece, always have that management piece of an environment, but the optimization piece I think needs to be brought more in front and center for that offering within a customer base. So that should be kind of in the top three things that you're offering. It's no lie when they say 30% of cloud spend is wasted. It's people not optimizing, it's people not consistently reviewing Azure environments or any other cloud environment to say, are we spending what we should be spending here? It's easy to set it up and get it going and then think you're doing the right thing. However, cost optimization is a top consideration for CTOs, business owners across the world when it comes to technology. And that's not always to bring the money down. It's often to free up budget as well, especially with the larger customer bases. An IT department will have a budget. If they're wasting 30% of their cloud spend, how could we help them free up that 30%? By some very basic and non-intrusive methods of commitments and Azure Hybrid Benefit with the licensing, and they've suddenly got that budget then available to spend on other tools and resources they want, whether that's Copilot licensing or improved security measures or whatever that is. If you're the company to go to them and enable that, you're suddenly a very, very valuable partner of theirs. This is especially prevalent in self-deployed environments. So if customers have deployed their own environment and are managing their own environment, they're obviously quite often a bit uneducated in this cost optimization piece. But it's quite often the case with other partners as well. It's easy to let slip. So what we have with a lot of our partners is the ability and to train you guys up to we support from the actual kind of the assessment piece. If you've got customers out there, go and talk to them, speak to them and say, do you there'll be a percentage of your customers already that have Azure, whether that's something they've deployed themselves direct with Microsoft or something they have with another partner elsewhere. And have that conversation around, if we can do a quick assessment, if we can save you X%, can you bring that Azure to ourselves? And that's, easy revenue for you to win there. You don't have to be, it's a pre-built environment that you don't have to deploy. And you're suddenly showing your customer, they've got that single point of billing if they bring it to you. They've got that increased kind of budget available to them because of the money you can save them through the optimization piece. And then you've got a much stickier customer, because they've got more services with you and you're showing your value. In terms of the assessment piece, we can do that for you. You just need to bring them to us and we can show you what information we need. Across the ones we do, in the last 4 years, we've probably done 2 or 3 of these a week, and I'd say we've been defeated 4 times, I think 3 or 4 times that we haven't been able to optimize an environment to some extent, but the average we see is around 20% we can save on the environments just by using the reserved instances and the Azure Hybrid Benefit. There are further things we can do after the fact, but that initial assessment, the average we save is about 20%. So please do, if that is something you want to explore, please do come and talk to us. And then finally, the program. So this is something that, whether it's the Azure practice or the modern workplace practice, kind of the Microsoft aligned practices we have here is we're really, really, really big on making sure that our partners understand what is available to you from ourselves, from Giacom, but also from Microsoft as well. Microsoft, for all the love in the world, are amazing at coming up with new programs and funding offers and kind of these great ideas, and they're blooming awful sometimes at actually communicating that to people. So it is full onto us to make sure that you understand. But from an Azure perspective, there's a whole host of things available that can really help you streamline your operation. And a quick overview here, and again, we've got much more in-depth kind of collateral if you wanted to explore these in more detail. But the top 5 we have are, firstly, we have solution assessments. So these are a tool which, if you have a customer who has 5 or more virtual machines that they wanted to look at for Azure, Microsoft will fund a solution assessment, which is a fully automated tool which kind of sits on our customer's environment for up to 2 weeks, fully assesses what they have, how they're using it, what they're doing with the environment, and then delivers a complete picture of, firstly, what you have at the moment, how much is that costing you, and that includes all costs of power, manpower, cooling, etc., etc. So that total cost of ownership that they are actually seeing. But then how should that look in the cloud? Right size, optimized, with reserved instances, with Azure Hybrid Benefit. How much will that actually cost in the cloud, and how should it look? This sounds very simple, but these are hugely effective at bringing up the average kind of conversion rate for Azure opportunities, and we would highly recommend utilizing them. I think the conversion rate for a solution assessment attached opportunity is around the kind of late 80s%, about 86-87% convert to a live opportunity and a live deployment. So really effective. You've then got 2 funding pots. So we've got the Azure credit offer, which is if an opportunity is worth $12,000 or more in the first year, you can get 10% of that value back as a credit for the customer, to help that initial kind of first few months of kind of deployment. You might want to make sure that it's all right sized and kind of make sure that things are all running smoothly before committing to any reservations or doing any additional work, etc. Microsoft credit that onto the account. And we also have an internal pot of money here at Giacom. We call the proof of concept funding pot, which is up to £1,000 over the first 2 months for any net new Azure opportunity. This is managed internally by the practice, and that's credited back to the partner after the first 2 months of consumption are complete. And that's again to help with that initial kind of setup, and that's credited back towards the Azure consumption itself. There is an additional funding pot called Azure Accelerate funding. So if you have a solutions partner designation in the infrastructure pot under the SMB track, that enables you to have access to a funding pot called Azure Accelerate funding. These are done on what Microsoft call t-shirt sizes. So you've got extra small, and small sizes, and they can deliver up to $12,000 worth of credit for yourselves and the customer to go towards the actual deployment and the professional services costs. If you do have that SMB track solution partner designation within the infrastructure side of things, please do drop me a line, because I'd love to run you through exactly what is available to you on this. There's a bit to go through, so won't do it all today, but if you have that SMB track infrastructure designation, please do get in touch so I can run you through how you can apply for that funding. And then the final one is the Cloud Accelerate Factory. This is been a huge advantage for a lot of our partners over the last year. It's a team at Microsoft who will work with you and take the majority of the work of the actual deployment from an on-premise environment into the cloud and do it for you. That sounds too good to be true. That's what we thought when they first came out, but we've tested them, we've worked with them for over a year now, and a lot of our partners are using them extremely frequently to get deployments done. There is no minimum opportunity size. There is no value requirements on this. This is a team at Microsoft that will do deployments for you into Azure. There is some work that you will need to do yourself in terms of anything that needs to be done on the on-premise environment or the existing environment elsewhere, but the majority of the work is done for you, and anything that you do need to do, they will support you in showing you how it needs to be done. I can't stress enough how much these guys and girls at the Cloud Accelerate Factory have really simplified the kind of the Azure solution sales process for a lot of our partners by just taking that workload off their hands. And it's partners that not only the ones that don't have the technical ability at the moment to deploy, but also ones that have that technical ability. But then they're thinking, why are we doing this ourselves? We could get Microsoft to do this deployment, and we can have our technical teams focusing on other areas, or our technical teams are snowed under. We'll pass this opportunity over to the Cloud Accelerate Factory to deploy. It's hugely advantageous, and I would heavily recommend, if you have any other opportunities, making sure that we are utilizing these programs. And just to give a bit of an overview of how we can see these fitting into an opportunity lifecycle, this is how we can really streamline your operation. So within the scope and assess piece, you've got a new opportunity, bring that opportunity to us at the Azure practice. We've got our pre-sales team that can help support in terms of scoping and assessing that opportunity, looking at what we think the best practice will be around this. We've got solution assessments. That's obviously give us indicative pricing from our team as well. Sorry. We've got solution assessments. We can do that automated assessment piece as well then to give a really in-depth view of it. And we've also got something called Azure Migrate, which is another free tool which can be utilized if it doesn't qualify for the solution assessments for any reason. Project funding, if customer wants a proof of concept run up, absolutely fine. We've got proof of concept funding that can cover the money for that. We've got the Azure credit offer from Microsoft as well, and also the Azure Accelerate funding if you're in that SMB infrastructure designation piece. And then deployment services. You come to the deployment piece. You've won that opportunity. The customer wants to go ahead. Let's hand that over to the Cloud Accelerate factory at Microsoft, who can deploy that for you. So as you can see there, you've taken a lot of the bulk of work that would, be seen as a lot of partners as a blocker of getting into Azure as an option for your customers. And we've automated with Microsoft a lot of that process to be able to, free up your time, free up your knowledge, and give you that ability to kind of push forward with Azure-based solutions a lot sooner than a lot of partners realize they might be able to. So it's a very, very simplified process, and it's working extremely well for a lot of our partners to really accelerate what they're achieving. And after that, you've got the wraparound services to really maximize your kind of your margin, your kind of stickiness with the customers. You've got that optimization piece, which we can support with support contracts, roadmap planning to look at future services. What other resources do you want to bring into Azure in the future from your current environment, et cetera, et cetera. And that's really how simple it can be. And I know that looks like I'm probably oversimplifying a lot of things, but it really does bring down the workload a lot for our partner base to utilize the programs as we recommend them. A few examples of how our partners use these. So solution assessments, we had one particular partner who has a very, very, very strong sales team and a very strong Azure focus, but their bandwidth was really stretched. Their pre-sales team, unfortunately, they lost a couple of heads, and the pricing aspect and the opportunities and the pre-sales activities really kind of became a kind of a bottleneck for them internally. So what we did with them, we worked with them to automate the solution assessment kind of application method. Any opportunities they had would come through to our team. We'd make sure that everything was put onto a solution assessment that would run, and that would really took the pressure off their internal teams to do that initial assessment piece. Our pre-sales internally would support the solution assessment team, would then kind of run that assessment, and then we can hand that back to them. They have now built out their pre-sales team again, and they're full mast again, working hard, but they still do this as a full kind of opportunity kind of process management piece, because it's taken so much work off their hands. The Azure credit offer, the proof of concept funding we have available. We've got a partner who's got an AVD-based platform specifically designed for the legal sector. So what they have is whenever they have one of these available for a new customer, they don't stress about the sale too much, because they know all they do is get to the customer and say, look, we will build you an environment, and they have that customer environment built out for a number of test users. We fund it through our proof of concept funding, and then that really helps kind of solidify the sale for the partner to bring the customer on board by actually showing them the technology for free, without them having to kind of sell it without having that in front of them. And that's all done for free. And then the Cloud Accelerate Factory. One of our partners was actually the first person to use the Cloud Accelerate Factory in the SMB sector in the UK. That was, I think, June last year. It's a full Azure migration, moving from on-premise to the cloud. Opportunity ran really smoothly. Deployed within 3.5 to 4 weeks as their SLA is, and that partner now has a full kind of pipeline of customers that are kind of working through the Accelerate Factory to really kind of speed up their deployment. They have an internal technical team that can do this work, but why use it when you've got a team at Microsoft that will do it for you? Extremely effective, really kind of streamline their processes and help them kind of free up their technical team to go and focus on other work as well. So that's some really good examples there of what we've seen with partners having success with the programs. And that is me. Apologies, I know I talk extremely quickly. I was conscious I had an hour to get through all that content, so I didn't want to miss anything out. But If anybody's got any questions, please do feel free to post them in the chat now or in the Q&A section. If anybody's got any follow-up you want from this, please do drop me a line and kind of get in touch, whether that's directly or via your account manager at Giacom. Always keen to talk, always keen to help partners start looking at Azure in anger, and hopefully get things moving. Yeah, thanks very much for joining today. I hope it's been useful. If you have anything you need at all, please don't hesitate to reach out, but I'll hang on for a couple of minutes in case anybody's got any questions. Peter, your question. So using all these Microsoft services like the Cloud Accelerate Factory, is there any ongoing support in case of problems? In terms of problems, that can mean a few things. So I'll cover off what they could mean. So in terms of any problems, if there were any problems with the deployment, the Cloud Accelerate Factory would be on hand to fix those straight away, obviously. Their process will be always that if there's any issues within the actual deployment piece, they don't stop their work until the final handover is, and to be clear, throughout the process you'll have a weekly meeting or possibly two every week with the Cloud Accelerate Factory to monitor progress. Then before anything goes live, they've got the environment ready to go, and there will be a go no go decision made with you, the customer, and the Cloud Accelerate Factory. If there are any issues at all with the actual go live, they will sort those out, they will manage those and work with you to make sure that everything's live and up and running. Once things are live, if there are any issues after that, yes, we can get in touch with them to check in to say, this has gone wrong. What could it be? The Cloud Accelerate Factory obviously would be happy to advise, but also we've obviously got our internal teams here. We've got our support team at Giacom, and also we have kind of very high level. I can't remember the name of the support package we have in Microsoft now, but I think it's Premier Support we have in Microsoft to support us in any kind of support needs after that as well. So yes, you are completely covered from any support perspective. Okay, that looks like that is the last of the questions for today. So again, thanks to everybody for joining, and anything else you need, please do not hesitate to reach out and get in touch. Thank you. Bye-bye.